Merlin Sports.
Hey everyone, this is Phenomena from Merlin Sports, and we continue with our NHL preview series. In today's episode, we preview the Pacific Division of the Western Conference. And joining me again today is DDawg, our resident NHL expert. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, my friend. Ready to go, rearing up for the start of the hockey season on Tuesday.
Awesome. So we go out west, and we're going to preview the Pacific Division. And just to remind everyone, I'm going to name off the teams that make up this division in the order that they finished last year. So starting from the bottom, the San Jose Sharks, the Anaheim Ducks, Seattle Kraken, Calgary Flames, Vegas Golden Knights, the LA Kings, the Edmonton Oilers, who were the Stanley Cup finalists last year and pushed Florida to a seventh game, and the Vancouver Canucks, who won the division last year. So Vancouver and Edmonton, the only teams to finish over 100 points. And of course, rounding out the top three, the LA Kings, along with Edmonton and Vancouver, made the playoffs. And Vegas was a wild card entry. So, what do you see from the bottom four and the top four? Do you think any of these teams switch spots? Do you see a team on the rise, and likewise, do you see a team on the decline? So I'll turn it over to you to start us off.
I mean, in terms of the bottom four, I think the bottom four is pretty settled. Obviously, San Jose is went out there and did some signings to kind of improve their team from what it was last year. But I think the Ducks and the Sharks are still the two bottom feeders of this division. I think the Kraken might be able to pull something up, although I'm more leaning towards Calgary and Calgary over Seattle in that sense. I think they'll scrap they could scrap for a bit for a wild card. I don't think either one of them, Seattle or Calgary, get into the wild card position there. The big thing for Calgary is that they lost Jacob Markstrom, right? They traded him away. We'll see, whether that's going to be as a big a loss as I think it is. I mean, anytime you give up a top-notch goaltender, you got to be hurt by it. But I mean, they haven't really done anything in their roster. They traded away some players at the end of last season to kind of start building back up their team in terms of a young team. But I don't see them catching up there. I mean, they don't have anybody a proven top-notch goaltender now. So we'll see how it goes with what they have on the back end. And of course, I'm a big believer. If you have a good goaltending, you're going to challenge. So I think those are the bottom four in this division, right? I got Anaheim finishing last, San Jose finishing just below them, and Seattle finishing just above them, and then Calgary finishing fifth in the division. I think the top of the division, it's actually one team and then three other teams that are kind of bunched up. Maybe not so much, but I think the Oilers, they're going to be on a mission this year. They sniffed the Stanley Cup last year. Even after being down 3-0, they still sniffed the Stanley Cup. And they just missed out on it. And that's got to sting, but it's also going to drive a guy like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to really roll up their sleeves and get back to where they were the previous year. It looks kind of like the Edmonton teams from the 80s. They get there, they miss out winning the first time, but then they get back the next year and they win it because they know what it takes to win it. Steve Skinner had a really up and down playoffs, but at the end he came through for them, and he played really well in the Stanley Cup final at the end. He wasn't the reason why they lost. So I like the Oilers to win the division. I think the Vancouver Canucks finished second, only because again, they didn't have a lot of turnover. Their main concerns are going to be the Brock Besser injury. whether what's the impact to that on him, as he comes back. But their goaltending is very strong. As you saw, they had some key injuries in the net, and they still were able to put in some top-notch goaltending over the course of the playoffs. So I think Vancouver, they had an unexpected year last year, but I also think they came back. They showed in the playoffs that it wasn't too surprising, because they battled. They could have easily went to the conference finals and played Dallas. Then I got the Golden Knights. This is still a team that won the Stanley Cup. I think losing March so hurts, but I think overall that they will be okay. They snuck into the playoffs last year, and played the Dallas Stars tough. So I think they'll kind of jump up a little bit, because I think the Kings are going to fall a little bit. I don't think the Kings are going to be as good as they were last year. They're an older team. They haven't really they brought in a couple guys, but nobody spectacular. They still have Kopitar and Doughty, although Doughty's out for I think the first couple months of the season.
That's a big injury.
That's a huge injury for them. And then Pierre-Luc Dubois, in terms of, they traded for him last year from Winnipeg, but then they let him walk this offseason. So that was a bit surprising. You give up something. I'm hearing that they felt that Cam Talbot was a big loss, but I don't see that. He's not like a top-notch goaltender. If I'm not, so I think the Kings drop a little bit, the Knights come up a little bit. I don't think the bottom four teams that I mentioned have anything to drive themselves into that top four. I know San Jose went out and did a lot of spending. We talked about the teams who had a good offseason. San Jose is one of those teams that had a good offseason, like Nashville. But I don't think that they have enough. They started to rebuild a few years ago, and they're still in that rebuilding phase. So that's my outline of division. I see Edmonton winning the division, Vancouver finishing second, Vegas finishing third, and the Kings finishing fourth. I don't know if the Kings will get into a wild card this year, because I think the other the Central Division is much deeper and more competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was last year, and same might be true this year. Like this, I think, is the weakest division in the league. You just, with these two bottom feeders, the San Jose and Anaheim, they had terrible years last year, and I think the outlook is better for San Jose. I don't think that they'll finish in the basement this year, so I think they are a team that has made some improvements. And it's hard. They didn't even have 50 points last year, so it'd be hard to do much worse than that. But the top draft pick, Celebrini, although I think he's injured to start the year, but a couple of good veterans, Alex Wenberg, Tyler Toffoli, Barclay Goodrow. So they added some veterans to go along with a young core. And I think that's enough to bring them out of the basement this year. Anaheim, on the other hand, they didn't add much at all. And their team was really poor last year. And I think that they just maybe they move off of Trevor Zegras this year. Flashy player, but isn't bringing much substance to the team other than the odd highlight reel goal. So there's got to be more, more to that, more to a team than just some dash and flash once in a while. I don't see them. I think they're in for another tough year. I think Calgary is in the bottom with them. Maybe a little notch above Anaheim and San Jose. I think Anaheim's the bottom of the division for me, followed by San Jose, and then Calgary. I think Calgary's just lost too much. They have too much money into Huberdeau. So their hands are tied until the cap goes up next year. I mean, even with the players that they lost throughout the year, because they're a team that was a seller throughout the year. So like even from opening day last year till now, they've lost like Tyler Toffoli, Zadorov, Lindholm, Noah Hannafin, Tanev, Markstrom, their top goalie, and Mangiapane. And these guys are all regular NHLers, valuable players. They're all gone. And, they added Anthony Mantha, that decent, but that's about it. That's the only brand name player that they added to, and all those names I just mentioned, they never, they didn't really adequately replace them. So, you got Backlund as your number one center, who's better suited as a two-way. You could argue it would be a defensive center on any other team. So I think they're in for a tough year, and that they fall. They still have a couple of decent defensemen, and I guess they're gonna go with some young goalies, but I think it's going to be a very painful year again in Calgary.
I mean, it's got to hurt them because watching the Edmonton Oilers, their biggest rival, reach the Stanley Cup Finals and are now on the rise, right?
Mm-hmm. And Seattle, I don't think they did that much to improve. Well, actually, they brought in Brandon Montour, but they give him a monstrous contract, and I think he's going to be signed till he's 40. So I'm not sure how that contract's going to age. He might do well this year because he's been a great defenseman the last couple of years with Florida, one of their anchors on their defense. So they might get a bump this year, but I don't think that contract's going to age well. But their defense isn't bad, right? Vince Dunn, Larson, Oleksiak, and Montour. Like the top four is pretty good. I think Seattle is going to battle Vegas for that fourth in the division. I see them going back and forth. Because Vegas, as you alluded to, they took some hits off their roster as well.
Yep.
And, they were carrying a lot of older players who, had trouble staying healthy the last couple of years, right? Mark Stone being at the top of that list, like, great player when he's on, but he just had trouble staying in the lineup. Even, Jack Eichel, really good player, but, he kind of hits the injury bug once in a while. They lost in addition to losing Jonathan Marchand, so Chandler Stevenson, goaltending depth, and Logan Thompson, Michael Amadio, who, another depth forward, William Carrier, and then Alec Martinez, another solid defenseman. They added Victor Olofsson, is probably the best brand name player that they added. So I think maybe Seattle might have enough to overtake them. And then, like you, I think the top three. I think we have the same top three. I think Edmonton, yeah, they're just stacked. When you come that close and you get a taste, makes you hungry. Kind of like how Florida was on a mission all last year, because they got so close to winning the finals, and they got to the final the previous year. So I think the same lesson could be in store for Edmonton. And I think they take it. Like you, I saw some good things in Stuart Skinner, which I think it erases any doubt. Like he is a good enough goalie to take you all the way. They did get hit because of they had some offer sheets because they're up against the cap because they re-upped Draisaitl, so they lost, unfortunately, Broberg and Holloway, so the middle of their lineup. But they made some pretty good additions in Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, so they're bringing in some veterans, kind of like low risk, not too costly and then also the growth of players like Bouchard and some of their other good players, good young players as well. Just that experience. So I look, and then also like this is probably the most competitive guy in the NHL is Connor McDavid. Like this guy just wants to win, and he gets so upset when they're not winning, and is good enough to carry a team on his shoulder. He can just drag him into the fight. So very unique player as well as being the best player in the league. This guy wants to win like no other player. It's
Well,
truly.
I mean, just look at how they started last year. They had an awful start to the season, and then halfway through the season, they just had this incredible run.
Yeah, I think they overtake the Canucks for top in the division. Canucks still pretty good roster, and I think there's still some injury concern with Demko, the goalie. So that's why I'll give Edmonton the edge. But they added Jake DeBrusk, who's a very good two-way player. They didn't lose too much. I mean, they added Zadorov last year, so it's not like they lost a rental. Sam Lafferty, Mikheyev, Zadorov, so not too bad. They added Daniel Sprong, kind of an underrated player. Jake DeBrusk, I think, was a good addition, and then Rick Tocchet too as the coach. Like I like Tocchet, keeps the team competitive, and then guys like JT Miller, who had a kind of a renaissance year for him, and then also Elias Pettersson. I think he will have a better year than he did the previous year. They got one of the Hughes brothers on defense, so they got a pretty good team, and I think enough to finish second, and then I see the LA Kings finishing third. So those would be, our top three playoff teams. Losing Doughty definitely hurts for LA, and that's a tough defenseman to replace. He's going to be gone for at least half this season. They did lose a couple of good players. Victor Arvidsson, as I just mentioned, went to Edmonton. Matt Roy went to Washington, and I guess they decided to cut bait with Pierre-Luc Dubois. But they're bringing in Joel Edmondson, who a steady stay-at-home defenseman. Tanner Jeannot, tough depth winger. Warren Fogle from Edmonton as well, another depth winger. So they'll probably finish middle of the pack again, and so I think they finished third, and followed by Seattle. And I think we see Vegas. I see Vegas slip a little bit. So that's how I see this division playing out, and I think that I think Edmonton will push to come out of the Western Conference once again this year and challenge for the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Okay, well, that does it for the preview of this division, and take care, and we'll talk to everyone soon.